And so, that's what we have to deal with. That is one of the limitations of the system.
Welcome to the classroom. Chemistry. Okay. Today, everybody know what that is? It's a copper bowl, half sphere. And we're going to turn this into a semiconductor. We're going to make a one-way gate valve out of this. We're going to start it right now. If I don't burn down the hotel. Okay, so what we want to do is I'll try to do this as big as I can get it here. So we want to take this copper and heat it up. And it can be any piece of copper. You could fold it up. And there's two parts to this crystal cell. But it's more than that. It's an ionic crystal cell that you can use it and let it dry out and put it away in a cupboard somewhere. And as long as you build the correct circuits to run with it, you'll be able to make a light so that you have some form of light. And if you build the oscillator efficient enough, you'll be able to light up your kitchen table if there was no electricity with a couple of drops of water. So how we're going to do this is we're going to take this copper, we're going to heat it up, and we're going to turn the outside to copper oxide, which I'll use as the green. That's going to be black. Then we're going to take the inside and turn it to corpus copper. It's going to be red in color. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this little layer on here with the heat on this. We're going to use this hot plate to let the copper in the air turn black. Then we're going to dump it in this, and all you girls should know this, borax. So we're going to clean it off. Okay, then we're going to use a pickling compound called elm. You want to pass it around? Elm. So go ahead and pass it around because I got a bag of it up here. 2 bags. And we're going to form the crystal with that. And by making a semiconductive piece of copper, it's getting hot, Chuck, up here with that. Okay. We want a one-way diode is what we want. Because we don't want to let anything back. We just want it to go one way. So we're going to put a paper towel in here on this semiconductive material, which is also photosensitive. It would be an easy way to make a photocell with salt water, but you're not going to get very much current out of it. It's going to be really inefficient. But in this situation, it's going to be real efficient. So we want a one-way diode, and we want it going in that direction, this way. Then what we want to do is we want to develop an electrical circuit for it that can take advantage of it. And everybody's familiar with garden lights, aren't you? You know what they are? The sun shines on them all day long, and in about 3 weeks you throw them out. That's really familiar because that's money, right? That keeps costing you over and over and over. And when you think your garden light's going to light up on the night that you want it, guess what happens? You find out the battery can't take the charge during the day because it's totally sulfated up and it's grown dendrites in the NiCad, and you have to either take and bang that battery or try to pop those things loose so that it will charge during the day. So what we want is a battery, and if we do enough of these batteries, we can run all kinds of things. And what we want to do is, when we need this battery, we want to be able to just use a little bit of moisture and run this solid state circuit and have it light what you want. So, people have said to me, now do we all know what this is so far? It's the copper. We're going to change it. We're going to make it semi-conductive. We're going to clean it off in the borax. So don't run away when you see the steam. Now, we need a circuit. We need a practical circuit that will allow us some efficiency to be able to light these super bright LEDs. And then what we need is some way to get a ring of these bright LEDs so that if we didn't have any light, we had a few drops of water, and if we needed to read something, we could read. That's where this comes in, with just one experimental LED. And of course, we'll have to turn the lights off to use this. But at that point in time, you'll understand why I said a circle of LEDs. So, let's just have to really waste some time while that heats up because that's really inefficient over there. So, because I'm not going to change my technology. I'm going to use every bit of my technology for every piece of equipment that I want to build. Now, I explained yesterday the SG circuit. Okay? Everybody knows it's got a bi-Fowler wound coil, is that right? Okay. So, we know that one of these coils, when the SG fires, is out of phase, and one's in phase. And then it flips around and does the other thing. So, all we need is some resistance and some drive off this, and we call this a force feed SG oscillator. And then all we need to do is put the LED between here and the ground. Now, from the patent that we filed under chargers that charge your battery in the moonlight, it's running the SG oscillator. It's been on the internet. Unfortunately, I pulled all the information because a few people who were given items took them apart after signing papers with me and then posted what the circuits were. So no more information ever got out from me. So unless I give you the information and say, okay, you can do what you want with it, I don't expect you to give it out. Anyway, this is for your information, and I expect you to do something with it, or at least experiment with it, so you have some form of emergency lighting that doesn't require much at all. And I don't care if you light your whole backyard up with it. I hope you do. But the nice thing about this is if you build the correct system, the rain comes along and waters it for you, and it just keeps going. So that's what we're interested in. So we want to use the SG circuit, and we want to talk about how to get more LEDs on here at the same brightness. Now, Chuck, do we have an array? Okay, good. So let's see where our heat is. So very carefully, right, a couple at a time, come up here and walk by here and look at what's happening to the copper. So do it very carefully. Don't stand here. Go right back to your seat. See the color?
John, how come in the middle is different color?
Because it's very hot in the middle. Yeah.
So have you cleaned it first before you did that?
No, you don't have to clean it. I don't have time to clean it. I have time to make light. Yes, but soon it's going to go black. And when that makes the color black, that's going to get dipped in that borax really quick. Okay, so now as they walk by, they can see it's starting to get black in the middle. And pretty soon that black's going to come up. And I'm going to be able to dump that and form the solid state semiconductor one-way diode from the center of the bowl to the outer of the bowl. The next item is something that would take years and years and years to go away, and that's a chunk of magnesium. Can everybody see that? Very light metal, not real heavy. Yes, pure. Okay.
I built one of these 3 weeks ago.
What, off YouTube?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, now you're doing it right here. Yeah. Here's another one, another chunk. Don't buy that bar off the internet, because you will pay about $56 for that through a science internet site. Buy the anode they stick in the ground and punch the steel piece out of the center. What they do is they drive this in the ground to keep the electrolysis from the pipes. So, next thing you're going to say is, oh, it's one of these kind of batteries that this is going to get eaten away. Wrong. It's going to last a very long time if the solution surrounding it is the same material that's allowing the ions to transfer. That's going to be this pickling compound. Now don't steal my magnesium. or we can't have any fun in the parking lot tonight. So basically what I want you to understand, if we build the SG oscillator, we would be stretching out about 45 feet of number 40 wire. 2 pieces, and we twist it so that we end up in the end with what's in the patent is basically, it looks like a toroidal coil, but it's not. It's just all wound together and then cable tied so that you end up with 4 wires. Then what we want to do is we want to build the SG circuit. Now some say the diode works better in the circuit, and some say you don't need it. Chuck never uses it. Is that right, Chuck? So we just put the resistance there, and that can be a pot, so you can vary the light if you want. And you force feed it from this battery. When you want the light, you just put a couple of drops of water in there, and the battery comes to life. Because what we want to build, what we want this material to do, this alum, is we want it to form a crystal and grow a crystal against the semiconductive bowl. Now when it does that, the crystal has, I don't know if Chuck brought the little glass. Do you have the little, yeah, the little glass? But anyway, when you do that, it's a porous type crystal. So you could look at it as if it would transfer the ions that we need through the material to the one-way gate valve so it can't come back. So if we just put the valve back up here, we only can go one direction to the oscillator, and that's this direction. Now most people don't do that. I do it for a simple fact, is it's always ready to go, and there's no galvanic effect because the current can't go backwards. Yeah, you want to pass that around, Chuck?
Yeah, I got a couple of them.
Okay.
From the old silver form.
So Chuck, we're passing around one of the crystals so you can see what it looks like when it does its thing. Well, we're starting to go black. We need a torch. I look at it one way. Utilize everything. There's energy in everything. It's just a matter of finding the correct combination, and then it's a matter of finding the correct electrical circuit that will let you do what you want to do. The SG circuit has always done some amazing things with different things, with water electrolysis, with earth batteries. It's almost like the jewel thief, except the jewel thief, it was designed to take every joule out of the battery so that the battery was never usable again. So the next question is, if this is correct, this resistance correct, this coil's correct, what can we drive? We can drive an array of LEDs. Now, this battery is not going to be enough to even make a normal circuit turn on. But the SG oscillator can run down as low as 0.2 of a volt. So what we want to do is we want to balance these LEDs through some resistor that we pick. So you got to share the current so they all come on at the same brightness. Just don't start piling LEDs on there without trying to balance them, because you're not going to share the current, and it's not going to be what it's supposed to be. So it's basically like the output of any amplifier circuit, where you have to share the currents or you keep piling on. But this could be a multi-stage oscillator also. So it could have another oscillator here and another oscillator here and another oscillator here, and these batteries could start getting paralleled. And just leave them outside, because all you need is the dew. So why worry about the garden lights if you bury it? Why worry about any solar cells at all? The garden lights are on all the time. Ooh, now it's turning a really good color. This says it's working. It is now silver. If you want to come and look, come and look. Science groups, and it's an anode.
Oh, okay.
It's anode material.
All right.
So where would a guy look to go buy them?
Surplus, metal houses. But still, you still have to find this stuff.
The alum?
Yeah, if you really want to pay, go to the grocery store.
That's where we get it. No?
Well, you can get it at the grocery store, but a spice company will sell you 100 pounds for barely anything. It's changing, isn't it?
That's magnesium, you said?
Yes.
Isn't that the same stuff that we use with the flint?
Yeah, but you got to have pure magnesium.
Well, that's not pure.
Yeah, I'll answer questions later.
The company's used for cathodic protection.
Yes. Good word, cathodic protection.
My uncle does it. He's always talking about the magnesium
Yeah, they use the magnesium to keep it from
corroding. All
corroding
the
and everything.
Yeah. It's a slave. It becomes a slave.
If you use it in that condition.
Yeah.
Right. Now, during the 1800s,
Can't you use the anode from a water heater?
you could if it's pure. It's easier just to buy the big electrode and do what you want to do.
John, is this a ground here? What is this?
That's a ground. This is ground. It's negative.
Yeah, because you had ground coming out
Yeah.
here and you had this.
Yeah, you guys can ask later.
Okay.
Okay, during the 1800s, all the telephone companies, all the telegraph companies used alum batteries. The problem with this was that no replacement was required. So when they wanted to use the battery at the telegraph company, they would just add a little bit of water and their battery would come right back to life. And the real problem was that there was no obsolescence in the battery, which meant you didn't have to buy zinc electrodes. So Chuck will be showing copper zinc. But of course, that's not going to last like this. This one here is only going to require a little bit of moisture to keep going. And when I add the little bit of moisture, nobody will touch it. And for the next 4 or 5 days, that battery is going to keep driving that LED way past a jewel thief on the internet. And if you put it into the ground, come back in a couple of years. It's not going away. As long as you use the correct material to preserve the magnesium. After all, that's what this is, isn't it? Preserver. So, the origination of this all started on the internet with a guy by the name of Laser Saber. I'm sure people ran across that. But the problem was, what did Laser Saber do? Does anybody know what he did? What else did he do? What happened to the magnesium? Right. So he had a lot of current all of a sudden, and then it was a ridiculous battery. And that's been the problem with everybody. The book trains that salt water, magnesium, and carbon will give you current, and that's what it does. But what are you going to lose? You're going to lose the magnesium. So here again, we have to replace an electrode. So John says, well, that looks pretty neat. You know, I might build one of those. So I did. I bought a big graphite rod, and I bought this ribbon magnesium only to discover that the magnesium that they were selling is not pure, and it's full of pits to begin with. This is machined, and there are no pits. Little dimples where the lathe got at it, and where John wanted to file it, but that's okay. It's not going anywhere. It's a big piece of magnesium. So I sort of wrote a couple of emails, you know, on the internet commending him, saying, did you try this? Did you look at that? Have you studied what you're buying from the science company? Well, no, it worked. It's still working. And then one day, people started saying, oh, it disintegrated. And I said, duh. You know, stuff in salt water disintegrates. So I decided to start trying to figure out how to keep the current in one direction so it can go back the other direction. And I said, well, the only way I can do that is if I make a semiconductive battery, you know, semi-battery that's conductive in one direction. So I kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And I'm not a chemist. Don't claim to be a chemist. But I can tell you one thing that I learned about it. I'll redraw all these circuits and leave them up here. What I did find out about the crystal was this. That when it grows a pure crystal, and I'll just put it this way, can you see that? This crystal, for some reason, when it's working with this one-way gate, builds little tubes that run every direction. So I got to thinking to myself, wow, a crystal that you could see these little things and you could actually see the moisture inside these little tubes when you put it underneath a microscope. And so I was looking at tubes that contained moisture. And I knew that they went every direction. So that my semiconductive material had to be shaped, it had to be like this. It gave me the best output, the best response. I did get the response on a flat sheet, but it didn't last very long. This lasted forever. And Chuck's got a few of them here that we're going to run. And not only did we experiment with that, we built an piece of aluminum, and we cut 4 chunks of magnesium, like that. And we bought the carbon graphite rod and cut that, and decided, well, we need something here to connect the graphite rod. So we bored a hole in there and tapped it, and we added a screw inside here so we could attach the wire. However, what we found out was when we used the carbon, the alum material, the screw, and this is sitting on top like this. That would be minus, this would be a plus. That a very strange migration took place in the graphite rod. So I said to myself, well, no wonder all those batteries on the internet are failing. The iron wire that they're using gets sucked right through the graphite through these little tubes and starts to deposit between the material that you're trying to make the ionic transfer with. So you lose the battery. So I discussed all kinds of theories. Well, this is building up on the plate, and if you wiggle the plates, you'll find out that you've lost all the oxygen. This doesn't do that. This makes oxygen. So, boy, this is going to take forever. I wonder if we can turn it over. Hate to short out the hotel right here on the spot. But I'm trying to get the heat in there because I just want it to go. I'm just going to let it go to a certain color, and then I'm just going to pop it in there, and then we'll show you. But let me show you a real one while we're waiting for this one. No. Is it dry? Yeah, it's dry. Yeah, it's dry. Okay. So if I walk around, that's what it ends up being. So now how do I utilize this, right? Well, I have my oscillator. Oh my God, there's no moisture in it. So I better add some. Add a few drops here and let the crystal suck it through.
What about if driving rain comes and fills it up? Is that going to wreck our battery?
Well, you got to really think about this. You got to do more than just have John say it's building and building and building. Can everybody see that? Here. And it's a one-way gate. So there's nothing going back. There's nothing being generated here. You can feel the crystal. Yeah. Right, breakfast of champions. Hey, look, we're getting black. Yeah, and this should use a magnesium battery. Just add a drop of water and not worry about this one. Yeah, same material, semiconductive copper, and we don't worry about it anymore. So now we're almost black. I'm going to take it off a little bit early, a little early just to show you. Now the next part of this is something to put between the magnesium and the copper and the semiconductive material, which we just use a paper towel. By the way, Laser Saber would never talk to me again after those questions. And after I came on YouTube and said, oh, look, if you use this material, the magnesium doesn't go away. Because there's some protective thing in this aluminum that makes your pickles crisp. Oh. By the way, let me show you something about this battery. So on the energetics forum, when we were talking about doing this and using galena, and we were talking about using iron pyrite, and you can all go look at the whole conversation, Don't Believe John. Go look at it. It started with a stubble field work on my pages. The SG oscillator started during the SG group that Sterling Allen ran. The oscillator got taken apart on that group and spread out on the internet before the patent was out. So anyway, the unique thing is that I want you to take your NiCad battery with your 1 LED Joule Thief and short it out. Just leave it shorted out with the battery on it. Does anybody know what happens when you do that? Do you have the chance of it exploding? Try that with a lithium. I did with a helicopter. Flash. So anyway, it was a group effort on the Energetics Forum to find out how these crystal things work. You weren't going to hear it from anybody that was going to work in the field. They weren't talking. There was John Hutchinson, there was Marcus Reed, and many more before him. They weren't going to tell you a thing. And when you got too close, the internet site disappeared. So, point being, that we started a group called the Earthlight, Bedini Earthlight. And we went through cement, we went through cooked copper. You just go there, you'll find it. Aaron ran that, Peter's partner ran that. And anyway, see, doesn't care. Didn't destroy the magnesium, got a little brighter. So you want to short some more? We're black. So now what are we going to do with it, right? Yeah. If I wasn't so blind, I could do it. I'm just going to cut it. Now, come up and look what's in here.
That's the borax solution, or
Yeah, that's the borax solution, and it just turned, it just did what I wanted it to do.
And
See?
any particular
See
concentration?
the red copper? That's the semiconductive agent. So I'm making a one-way gate valve, sort of like Murray. I already washed it. Should do this 2 times. I usually do this 2 times, but I'm doing it 1 time just to do this for you. And then I'm gonna let you short it out yourself. Don't believe me? This could be a trick right here.
I've got a name for this. This is John Bediniego World.
Yeah, you could say that, but you're gonna need it.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Well, it's shorted out, isn't it?
And if you take the short off, it comes right back on.
No, that's an illusion.
That's an illusion.
Well, of course.
It didn't destroy your battery.
No. Can only go one way. Can't come back. So let everybody know.
Yeah.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the material and I'm going to put it in the bowl. Just like that. See if I can get this here. See, it's down there in the bottom? And it's around that red copper. Because that portion of it is actually what I'm after. I'm after this portion. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. That, by the way, has this material dissolved in it. So I'm just not going to add tap water. I'm going to have a treated water. Well, just like this. See? You don't need to be an Einstein to do this. Einstein doesn't work here anymore. This is nature. Okay, so then I just only have a little piece of newspaper or paper towel, something that's porous, that you can look through it, see? Here.
What about coffee filter?
Coffee filter works. But all your copper black oxide is down here in the bottom. And let me warn you about this. So I'm going to make the warning now. The red copper corpus is poisonous. Don't get it in your system. Wash your hands. Not like me. Okay, so all I'm going to do is put it down there. Just like that. Now I'm going to take the magnesium and smash it down in the bottom. Then I'm going to take and I want to build the crystal. Science at its best. So there it is. The array. Now, that's pretty dry crystal. I need a crystal. Turn the lights down a little bit. Oh, okay.
Maybe I get in trouble at home because I do that to the wife. I go, hey, is that right?
God, could I read by that? You bet I could if they're white. That is a shared array. Look at the wall back there. Look at the ceiling. Now, does John goof around? The SG circuit. Why? Because of that spike. These are 2.8 volt super bright LEDs. And this is the SG oscillator. And instead of putting it to a second battery, we take that spike, right, clamp it off. Now, let's get really interesting with it. Let's do something really interesting. Let's say that we don't care to have this thing on during the daytime. So if we took the SG oscillator, and our LED array is out here. Okay, really simple. Solar panel, never to be used except for the detection of light. Okay, that's all it's used for. So when it's light, this is biased. So the solar cell puts out the voltage, the first transistor pulls down, shuts the oscillator off. Goes dark, that opens up, oscillator runs, LED ray comes on. That's how simple it is. Should we short this one out? So we want to let it sit for a while because in some known cases, if you short them out and come back, they have more energy. Now, what can we do with this, right? Well, this has quite a bit of current, probably on the order, just the way it sits right there, of 300, maybe 400, almost a half amp at 1.1 volts. So unshort it, array comes on, crystals forming, and it's going to stay there. So we'll leave it there. We're going to leave them here. Now, what can we do with it? What else can we do with it, right? Can we get anything from it at all that's beneficial? Yeah. Come up here. One at a time. Just come up with a line. Okay, now what I could be doing is taking my phony flashlight batteries, right? Yes. And recharging them because the radiant will recharge the batteries. I could take NiCad batteries and be recharging them with the spike from the SG motor over there. A whole bank of them all at one time. And I could turn around and put them in whatever I wanted. So there's free for you. But you had to work to get it, didn't you? Besides, it's the surface area that gives you the current and the magnesium. So this is only the simple aspect of it. You would make a multi-stack cell, and then you got amps. Here's how you would charge batteries with it. You would build the oscillator. The SG, remember, is a forced oscillator, so the output to that is going to look something like this. These are the spikes. So you would just do the same old good old boys trick with the diode, and you would put the appropriate number the appropriate number of magnesium cells with the copper, with a semiconductive gate, so it's only going this way. And you would connect it up to the SG oscillator, and then you would apply the battery you're going to charge to it the same way it's on the machine. And that only cost me a couple of drops of water. And it will stay like that for probably 3, 4, 5 days, depending on how much moisture was in the crystal before it dries out. But the unique thing is you can let it dry out, put it somewhere, and use it in emergency. Now we were playing around with this. We couldn't get a white LED. So, but it's like, see, it's really got some light this way. And we just couldn't get the mirrors right in there. But the other night I was sitting there and I'd say, well, can I read by it? And when it's dark and there's no light at all, yeah, I can read by it. So it would be the same thing as your garden light. You could read by your garden light if you had to. You would just build these cells, and I suggest if you're going to build them, that you want some current out of them, right? So the more area you can get, and the bigger the bowl, the more the current. The more the current. Because it's the current in this forced situation that's going to give you the power. This does not work like the rotating magneto. This is an oscillator, a real oscillator, and many times we've charged batteries with these oscillators, in fact, to take the place of the wheel. It's not the same effect, but it does charge a battery. And that's all that's important. Did I get all my radio batteries charged? Yes. Here's the other thing. 2 of these run an FM transmitter for approximately almost 5 acres. 3 days in a row. Chuck has just said it because Chuck is the kind of guy that says, BS, John. He's one of my guys. But he won't let you get away with anything. He has to prove it to himself, right? So he drove around in a car for days and days and days and says, hey, that's about 5 football fields that transmission's going. But it's going around 5 football fields in a radius, right? It's covering a lot of houses. Then now you got communications, you could talk to your friend if you had to. So you can do what you want to do with this because this is information that is on the internet, on the Energetics forum. We've used galena to do this, which is fool's gold, or iron pyrite, which is fool's gold. We've used iron pyrite, we've used zinc, we've used carbon to do this instantaneous. But this works the best. Normally when you do a saltwater battery, you have an increase in the current until the bubbles form on the plates. It doesn't have a depolarizer. As soon as the bubbles are there, the current is gone. This doesn't do that. This generates oxygen. Is what comes out of there. Everybody's saying, John, how much borax did you put in there? John's going to show you. And he stirred it up. How much alum did you put in the water? Doesn't make any difference, does it? It's not real critical. It's not rocket science. The bowl, you guys want this circuit? Do you want to take pictures with your camera before I raise it? It's doing oxygen and hydrogen. It's not consuming anything. It's not doing anything. Doesn't consume. It consumes the water. See, long before anything happens to the material, it's out. The crystal's dry. I've had them running for 6 months straight, just like you see right there, by adding a drop of water every day. Nothing is being consumed except the water. Yeah. Well, there's some kind of nanostructure that's taking place in the crystal. Yeah. It's growing almost, I would call it a cauliflower crystal. That's exactly what it's growing. Oh no, it keeps growing. It keeps growing until it consumes the wire. No. Chuck, you got any dry ones? I think we wet them all. But the point is, Chuck has had them in a box laying in the shelf for weeks and weeks. This is a failure battery, but it's a test. What's the failure?
The failure on this one is, I was experimenting with the one-way gate. So the magnesium was in the center and it was basically shaped like a horseshoe, if you will. So I was trying to send it that way and that way in the magnesium to see what would happen. And it worked for a couple months and then it failed. And it's the same thing that would happen if you didn't make that Cooper's copper, didn't make it a one-way gate. You just had clean copper and used it normally. It'll work and will work for quite a while, but it won't last like that. So that was an experiment. I got a couple others up here when we go on break. You can look at, we'll leave them out all night, leave them on all day tomorrow, and when we go on break, we can talk about them, and I'll answer some questions on them. and show you various experiments that we did with them and explain to you why they failed, at least why I think they failed.
Chuck's precise. He's a great guy to work with. He says, I don't believe you. I have to do it myself. Anyway, the point is, that's why I made it semi-conductive, because I knew of the failure that was going to take place. You must make the rectifier if you want it to last.
Does it matter what kind of water you use? Distilled, well, spring?
No, see, this is not your normal water anymore.
So it doesn't matter if there's other...
No, I don't know. I'm waiting for nature. I want it to rain, right? No, it does not make a difference what kind of water you want to use, or you're on a well. Then just mix a little bit of this together, and you're going to have some, it's going to have some minerals in it. And you know how you tell if you're going to get a failure out of it and you need to change the water? This will change color according to the mineral that's in the water. Does that answer one of the good questions? But you can do what you want to do with it. So Chuck, now do you want to tell them anything? You want to just put these over there, let them run?
Does it continue to create more crystals?
Yeah, it does. It grows. It's like it expands out because you're watering it. You would mix up this solution to water it. Unfortunately, maybe you can't. So you're going to depend on rainwater then. Or you're going to depend on whatever water you can get. But you want enough of the material in there to where it's at, the water changes. It runs down these little tubes I told you about that I've seen underneath the microscope. And it just, the moisture stays in there because we watered this one and it's dry. So it's just going to the magnesium. It's not very wet. It's not, it's dry. But there's the light. So it's burning the water up. And I have been in a position with these to hear them hiss. They will hiss at you. They will go, and they'll let out a little bit of the gas. But most of the time they're building a crystal, and actually what's happening is it's building the crystal. And I noticed that. That's what I was hearing, was the crystal growing. Because I sat there and I just listened and I listened. And all of a sudden I'd be sitting there doing something on the computer on that group, and I'd hear this, and the crystal would grow.
Does the alum disappear?
No, the alum stays right there. It's not going anywhere.
After a while, does it get too concentrated?
No, not that I found. And I've been running them for months. Actually, I've been running them since the last conference. With what I've just showed you. By using these bowls, I've been stringing them together and running different things, and I think I even put some YouTubes up and posted it on the Energetics forum that I showed you the motor running, charging a battery, running off one of these. So you can make the motor sensitive enough to make the one-way gate like this. It requires some patience to do it because of the bearings. So Chuck wanted to make a 16-pole motor. I guess that's 16 poles. And we wanted to do something with it. We just didn't want to waste it. So we wanted to charge batteries with it. I've been able to charge NiCad batteries, just line them up and let them charge. But make sure the NiCad battery's good and it's not shorted. Because if you put a shorted battery on there, what's going to happen is this. You're not going to oscillate. It's just going to go out. You're going to oscillate. It's not going to do anything. You're not going to get any charge. That's the way it is. But the unique thing about these things is they could sit in that shorted condition and be put away on a shelf with moisture. And if normally when you short out a cell that's sulfuric and carbon and zinc, if you shorted that out like that, the zinc would just disappear. It would be gone. And you'd go to use the cell again, and you wouldn't have any zinc. Be at the bottom of the bowl, what's left of it. But this doesn't work that way, no matter what I do to it. And so I have tried other experiments with barium titanate. I have seen the oscillation with barium titanate in tubes. I've seen what happens when you combine this with sulfur. I've done a bunch of experiments with a bunch of chemicals that are very expensive off the internet. So I have spent thousands of dollars finding out how to get the best flow of current through these without eating up the magnesium. And this is the best. It's like a protectant. Now Chuck's worked with this too, so there's two of us. And I'll let him answer the questions. And he can tell you his experiences with it.
What was the source of the magnesium you did specifically? Me and John were just talking about that, and I don't recall where we got it from. Some of it we got from a science company initially, and it was
Science services. You need to go on the internet, type in magnesium rod. It's going to take you to a company that's just going to rip you off. So what this material is anode material sitting in warehouses with bars of magnesium from me to the wall. And they chop it off and you get it so much a pound. So you need to locate it yourself.
And once again, that's the oil companies and pipeline companies who typically use that. So it's purchased in bulk, so it's a big savings.
If you find somebody in your area that does cathodic protection for pipelines or gas lines or any kind of hydro underground stuff, they'll use magnesium all the time. They have sources of magnesium. So that's where you probably get. So look for cathodic protection companies, and they'll have magnesium to sell you for by the pound.
And it's
Thank
cheap.
you very much for that information.
If you get it like that, it's cheap, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very cheap if you get it exactly like he said.
Okay, the question is the separator material.
Just lets the ionic transfer through. It's like a separator in a battery.
Constructed just like a battery, it's a separator. Now, we did experiment with a lot of different insulator materials. And I can tell you, the two best things you can use is a white coffee filter, because it doesn't have all the contaminants in it that the brown ones do, and a white paper towel. Stay away from felt and those kind of things, because that becomes really tough to work with and it doesn't work very well. Question is, are you limited to your amperage? You can series these and you can parallel them and build on that. I've showed that in some of my videos too. If you go on the internet, on YouTube, and search for Woodchuck H, you'll see all my videos up there on the various crystal batteries and earth batteries and air batteries that we built. And you'll see that we can series and parallel those, and it is beneficial, yes. Yeah, Woodchuck H.
Is there a video of you just running an SSD current battery?
I don't remember if I have one up there or not. I know John does. So you might want to search his.
As the crystal grows, is it better to clean it up or just let it grow the crystal?
To let it grow or to break it off and okay. That's a good question because we use some acrylic to make some tubes and stuff in various creations of this. And that crystal grows and it is extremely strong. It will break acrylic glue, it will break acrylic, it will break super glue. Those crystals are very, very strong and they keep growing. So the thing to do is in these copper bowls you can see that in these final designs there's a lot less there and they're bigger bowls. And that gives you a lot of room for expansion. So when you start experimenting with these, leave room for expansion.
What is the source of the copper bowl, or would one get one?
Just type in copper bowls on the internet and you'll find a lot of different sources where to get them. No, it won't actually degrade because when we go on break and you come up here, not the new one, but these old ones, if you just lightly touch them where we didn't get them wet, it becomes like a glued surface. If you've ever taken Elmer's glue and just smeared it on paper, let it dry and pick it up, it's solid. So that's the thing, it doesn't degrade. Basically, how you do it is you want to put a little bit of alum in your bowl, once your bowl's prepped, and put the water in and give it a few minutes till it gets pasty. And then you can kind of form it and shape it like you want. So once that's done, put your insulator in, a little bit more alum, give it some time to get pasty. So you want a good contact surface. If you noticed when John passed that piece of magnesium around, he had shaped it a little bit on the lathe, so it's the same shape as the bowl. The big thing you got to remember here is surface area. The more surface contact you got between your two dissimilar metals, the better the performance you're going to get out of it. Next question?
Like, when you put the bowl into the water, the heated bowl into the borax with water, how were you able to distinguish between the red copper from the black copper in this period?
Okay, the question was, when we heat the bowl, distinguish between the red copper and the black copper. That bowl had so much surface area that this burner didn't really have enough heat to cook it really black. So you want to get it really black if you can. And the best way to do it is using an electric, one of these electric ones. You can do it with low pressure gas, being natural gas or propane. You'll have to do it a minimum of 3 times. And that's dunking it into the borax, rinsing it in cold water, and rubbing it with your fingers and getting all that off there. Being mindful to wash your hands good. Good idea probably to wear some latex gloves or nitrile gloves or something like that. The quickest way to do it though is with the electric versus the gas. And the reason that is because low pressure gas has so much moisture in it, it causes it to oxidize differently. So you really got to work at it that way. So if you got an electric one, that's the best way to do it.
I used an acetylene torch. Does that matter?
I didn't try acetylene. Acetylene, I would think it throws
a torch.
Yeah, just a regular propane torch or natural gas works. Those are clean burning. Acetylene is not clean burning at all, and I wouldn't recommend that. It's a very high temperature that's made for melting metal quickly, and the oxygen blows it away.
I heated mine until it was almost glowing red and then dipped it in the borax. Does that matter?
You can do that, but it won't work as well. So once you get it glowing red with the propane or natural gas, take it off and let it set for about 3 to 4, maybe 5 seconds. It's a visual thing when you look at it because it will turn black as it cools off from the red. And then at that point, you dump it into your borax solution.
Right. Well, I'm gonna make several more.
The what?
The disc, like the owl, the bowl and the magnesium, you want as little as possible?
The question is,
Surface area is what it's all about.
between the bowl and the magnesium, can you use too much alum and get too much distance in there? That's probably possible. You're still going to get your ionic transfer, but once again, it won't be as good. So you want to be mindful when you put these together. Like John said, your bowl shaped like this, shape your magnesium like that. Once again, soak your alum until it becomes a paste so you can form it. Once you got it formed, don't mess with it, let it sit, and then go from there.
How thick the alum
Just a thin layer. I mean, it's, once again, like John said, it's not a rocket science thing. It's kind of a common sense thing. Get them kind of close. Don't try and do them 1/4 inch apart or something like that.
Eventually, the bowl starts to fill up with the alum crystal. You stop adding alum to the water. Keep adding, or what happens?
Yeah, you don't have to keep adding alum water. You can just add whatever kind of water you want. I prefer using distilled water in the ones that aren't going outside, just to keep them, keep contaminants and stuff out of there. That's one way to do it. But if you got it sitting open out here and you're in a dusty environment or something, you're getting contaminants in there anyways. You can cover it with a paper towel or something to keep some of that out. But what we're seeing with these in this configuration is they seem to keep working and working.
To increase surface area, like the holes in the magnesium.
No, the question was drilling holes through the magnesium for surface area. What we mean by surface area is, if you look at the copper bowl up there, those are 2.5 inch, I think, copper bowls are 3 inch. These are 4 or 5 inch. So what we mean by surface area is more material of each. And that's going to help give you that little bit more amperage output is what it's for. It's not really going to change your voltage because in this configuration, you've only got one potential. It's like if you do zinc and carbon, you're usually limited anywhere from 0.9 of a volt to 1.2, maybe 1.3. In these, and with the carbon and magnesium, you'll be around 1.8 to 2.4 volts. So the surface area really won't change the potential, but what it does is allow for more current. The paper is merely an insulator. If you stick two similar metals together, you're not going to get anything. The alum would keep them separated briefly, but if they short, what's going to happen is just like John showed, for those of you that can see this, it's just going to be basically shorting, and that's what's going to happen. I'm just touching the two metals right there. So that's what's going to happen if you don't have that insulator.
Have you tried a large one, say a 10-inch bowl, or with a lot of surface area?
Well, we have built some bigger ones, and they do provide a lot more current. The thing is, it just depends on what you want to do with them, experiment. Yeah, and like this one with the 5 LEDs, if you, when we come on break and you guys come by and look at these, you'll see that the coil I built in this one is quite a bit larger than the rest. And most of them we build around 40 to 45 feet using number 40 wire. I built quite a few 50 to 75 feet using number 30 and 31 wire as well.
The thickness of the magnesium itself, just common sense can't just chunk.
Yeah, because
Down to a 1/4 inch, is it go anywhere down?
Yeah, the question is the thickness of the magnesium and the surface area there. Once again, it's up to you what you want to do there. A chunk of magnesium that size is going to outlast every one of us in this room, and this will keep on producing electricity. You can go bigger, but you really aren't going to gain anything if you don't have the same surface area with your copper.
If you have the same surface area width-wise, but it's only a quarter-inch thick, so it's a half inch thick, is that what you're doing?
What's that again now?
Okay, magnesium, right now, easy to put in there, like a half inch thick, or three-quarter-inch thick.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what if it was the same diameter, like it is, only a quarter-inch thick? What would that be?
It's gonna basically work the same. You're not gonna get anything different there. The thickness isn't so much what it is, it's that touching surface area. So even if it's 2 inches tall and 2 inches wide, it's not gonna make a difference if it's a quarter inch tall and 2 inches wide. But if it's 4 inches wide, then that's where you're getting the benefit out of it.
If the magnesium is flat sheet, you can use a flat copper with a around it to contain moisture.
There's a problem. On the internet, you can go to some of these scientific sites, and what I found out is they'll sell you a magnesium strip. And when you examine the magnesium strip, it's got already little pits in it. Okay? So it's not quite what you want to use for this. You want to be able to turn this to a flat surface that's nice and shiny without any of the little pits. Even though the cutting tool, makes those little pits, it lasts a lot longer than what they're selling you on the internet, because it's for college school classes, the carbon strips and the magnesium, and I've tried it all. This works the best. As I said, I spent hundreds of dollars just trying different electrodes from different science companies. It didn't work until my friend David Luke sent me this anode material that this man talks about over here. Then it became real stable and did not wear out. But you gotta punch the steel rod that's inside of it out. Because if you contaminate the magnesium, you're going to get galvanic action. That's a known process. That's like adding salt to it. You're gonna eat it away. Just because you think you're getting a lot of current with a salt, it's not gonna last. It's gonna eat it away. You're not gonna have anything left when you're done with it. You won't be able to short it out like this. It'll start to bubble, 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 and you'll watch little pieces of magnesium come off.
Magnesium, to make the connection with wire to it, you need something to connect to.
Well, if you look how I did it, what I did was I put the alum material in the bottom of the bowl, and then I waited a few seconds for it to grab the moisture. It starts to melt, and you wait, and then you put the coffee filter in, and I twisted it around at the bottom to make contact. Then I just took this stuff and poured it around there, and I brushed it off the top of the magnesium so that I could connect to this 1032 zinc-plated screw. Now the zinc, if you let the crystal go above the zinc, then it's going to contaminate it. So I haven't been able to find anything yet that, I haven't tried any of the exotic metals.
Like stainless steel.
Well, yes, I did use stainless steel on on the graphite rods, and it didn't migrate to the top of the crystal. It didn't go through the graphite rod.
Would it be a problem to use stainless steel in
No, there'd be no problem in using stainless steel here.
But you still gotta keep the Allen away from it.
Well, I do that automatically because, and if I was gonna do something where I didn't wanna water it, I would probably build some kind of funnel in whatever machine that I was building, and I would collect the moisture, and I would make it so, even if it filled up with water, that only this minute little amount through some kind of little tube, right, would be able to saturate the crystal. But I have buried them in the ground, and the sprinklers come on at night, and the lights are on, and nobody's home. Yeah.
Does it have to be pure magnesium?
Yes.
Be a, like a mag wheel is magnesium, aluminum?
No, no, you want pure magnesium. Because any magnesium that's contaminated is not gonna last. It's very important that it's pure. Well, yeah, but it's got other things mixed with it. Any more questions? How does the oxide form? Well, it's actually on the outside too, but I just didn't take the black off. I didn't scrub it off. I actually stuck my finger in here and rubbed off the oxide on the inside. So if you look at this one, you can see the black on this one right here. See the black on the outside?
Is that inside with rubbing it off? Is it real delicate?
Yeah, it's real delicate.
Just use your finger like it.
Right.
Don't use the scrub.
No, if you scrub it, you're gonna scrub that semiconductor layer right off the copper bowl. Then it's not gonna be the one-way gate. And you can test this yourself by taking a piece of copper and heating it on your stove, and you get that reddish looking copper on the top. And if you take an ohms meter and you scrape the copper on the bottom so you can make connection, it'll only go one way with the meter. It'll work just like a diode. There's no problem doing that. In fact, you can make some high voltage rectifiers that way for that machine. The cheap man's diode, but it's far better when they work than the diodes we're buying. There's obviously a reason they took them off the market. It's discussed on the internet. In fact, I think they replaced that rectifier with a rectifier called selenium, which was very poisonous because they can take the high voltage. So this works pretty well. Nothing goes back.
What kind of amp current do you get out?
That depends on your surface area. Like I said, I do this as big as possible. So this is probably producing, if I was to do it all over again, recook it again, get the best semiconductive material I could on there, start over, use the same chunk of magnesium, I could probably get 1/2 ampere at 1.1 volts. So it's not that it doesn't have enough current, it does, because it wouldn't run the oscillator circuit if it didn't have the current. The cell is probably 0 like this when it's dry, as far as the curve goes. And then you add the moisture to the crystal, and it's gonna pop up like this, and then it's gonna stay like this until it dries out, which it's gonna fall back down. So it stays with this eye continuous. It's staying right there. Now, if I add a little bit of moisture to it, then it's gonna come up a little bit more. This line will move up here. So when we look at the crystal batteries, I'll erase it, and then if somebody needs it, I'll put it back up. The idea is, if you're making the crystal battery, right, and you're doing it with rocks, then you're just crushing up a bunch of rocks, and you're making little pieces like this. And they're all different shapes, right? And whatever you're cooking this mix with, which is usually barium titanate and a few other strontium and things like that. Okay, I don't want to work with those chemicals. I don't want you working with them. They're chemicals you don't want to work with. You don't want to be cooking this on a stove and breathing that. So, when they say, well, we built a crystal battery, right? They say, okay, look, this one's alive, it lights the LED. It's doing the same thing as that, and it's just running along like that. And it's changing with the gravitational wave. It's known from all the reports that crystals, if you can detect it, will change with the gravitational waves. So the point here is, yeah, I can keep this for 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, but I have no output. I have maybe 0.15. Well, what can I do with that? I can't do anything with it. Yeah, I made a crystal battery and it lit the LED, you know, because I had a string of them. But I can't do anything with that. I need something that I can do. I need to be able to generate something that I can tap. You have to have something practical. If you have no power, and if you have no power at all, and you can have light, and you can recharge an iCAD battery, that's practical. You know, I've never been able to get anything more than 0.15 to 0.25 out of grinding up rocks. And that means going out in the front yard and picking up all the white and gray rocks and crushing them all up and buying these iridium electrodes and everything else that this does better. It lights the first time. I don't have to work. I can do this easy in my backyard. I can light my whole backyard up for a couple of drops of water. So it's pretty practical. And if you needed an emergency light or an emergency beacon or an emergency transmitter, that's the way you would do it. You would look at it practical. You wouldn't look at it, I developed this and blah, 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 and I'm tapping the ether and all this. I wouldn't do it. I gotta see it in front of me. And you gotta see it in front of you. So you know the way this works. It's burning the water. We can get little drops of water off leaves in the morning. Doesn't make any difference. But this, when I really need some power, where am I going to get these chemicals where they're shipping you, you know, maybe a little bottle of chemicals like this, and it's costing me $200. Why am I going to do that? This is expensive enough. The copper bowl is about, I think about $7 each, this size, and then $3 each, and then some other one that's $10. Now there was one copper bowl that I did order, didn't arrive. I kind of wanted it to arrive before this because I actually did want to make it, and the copper bowl was this big around. No, they're copper plated. Tried. Okay. Then there's a guy that says you can get them in a kitchen supply.
When you bury them in your backyard, you seal up. bowl, you just bury it?
No, I put a cloth on the top of them and just buried them. And then what I did was I ran these oscillators. But I was actually able also to take, I don't like doing this, but I was able to take a pine tree, right? And take a copper spike and a magnesium spike, put it in the tree, and not worry about it at all. In fact, it's still in my backyard in that tree, and it's on. Off the tree. So I could, yes, go out there in the forest, there's plenty of trees, in an emergency situation and just take a little bag of spikes and whatever I wanted to do, I guess. And a little SG that was portable and charge up my NiCad batteries. And there is quite a potential between these two metals, the copper and the magnesium, and also the magnesium and the graphite rod. But the problem with the graphite rod is it doesn't have anything in it to allow you to connect to it, unless you just clip onto the end and hope the clip lead doesn't pop off. So, but sooner or later, under what this is doing, what happens is the clip lead will migrate to the crystal, and you'll see this reddish. I don't know if Chuck brought any. Did you bring any that we could see how this fails? See the discoloration in it? There's not a pure thing there. So Chuck brought it. You can see that what Chuck did was he took some ground wire out of the ground that grounded something, and it changed color, and it affected the crystal. Now it's not pure anymore. And I think, does this work, Chuck?
No, that's a failure.
So we had our failures right here.
Ribbon too.
Yeah, and this is magnesium ribbon. You can see what happens to the ribbon.
You won't be able to burn it anymore. It's not magnesium anymore.
Yeah, it absolutely fails. All this ribbon's made for are for guys that want to start fires. And what you want to do is you want to generate energy, right? So you can't afford to have a failure. You need this light for several hours on a beacon or something like that so they can find you. You can't have that happen. Oh, gee, it was lit a minute ago. The ribbon popped. Yeah, so Chuck has tried them. We spent weeks and weeks and weeks trying every different direction of copper and this and that, and that's the most ideal. Okay, so I guess you can go eat. Bunch of different layers, what circuits I used and why I wanted to coil. Now, I'm not telling you this is the way the magnetic spins are. I'm just telling you when I hooked it up.
2 hours of sleep the other day.
This is the way they went.
All right, so I need 2
And I wanted
t-shirts.
him to go that way. I wanted him because I wanted to understand what is it that drives the rotor rod. When they're like gyros. They're like one wheel against another, and they make gear ratios.
So how much is the book then?
So depending on what that wheel is and what angle that wheel is that's rotating, it's given to you.
I already have a signed shirt, and I
How
watched
much
it.
torque the rotor's going to develop. So I'm trying to tell you that. I'm saying, okay.